going on, guys? Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream. Today we have on Roger from Tunze. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me, Devin. It's nice to be here.
Yep. Thank you for joining me. So, Tunze or Tunze? I hear both ways. What's the official?
So the correct German pronunciation is Tunze.
Tunze? Oh, wrong on both accounts.
Mila or Orca. It's the accent to the E kind of has a distinct German sound.
Mm-hmm.
But the Tunze has generally been the accepted English pronunciation just by our grammatical rules. So,
all right. So Tunze is the proper name.
yes.
That sounds very German. So
yes.
Tunze has definitely been a staple of products in the aquarium industry. Like I remember way back when using the power heads, and they've always been bulletproof and built like a rock. So I've heard many good things about you over the years. I've heard your name dropped a lot, and everyone seems to love you. Figured it'd be a great one to have on.
Well, thank you. I've done the U.S. distribution now for about 25 years. And our company, Tunze, is I guess we are about 65 years old now. We are 65. So it's, we've been around a long time. I think we're one of the oldest existing aquarium companies, and certainly one of the oldest that's focused on saltwater.
Yeah, that's awesome. How long have you been with the company?
25 years.
25? Nice. Now,
yeah.
It's been within the family too, hasn't it? So like the kids took it over, I heard a while ago. And
so Norbert Tunze was the founder. That was, I think, 1959. He invented the first aquarium powerhead. Started series production in the early 61. And then, I think it was the late 80s, his son, Axel took over, and that's actually when I started. I was with Axel. Norbert was still there, but he more or less retired from the day-to-day operations. And now Felix Tunze runs the company. So
nice.
it's third generation family-owned company.
That's pretty cool. That's a pretty long run too in the aquarium hobby.
Yes. Yeah.
No.
And but it keeps it fresh. It's interesting every time somebody new comes in. They're like, "Well, I don't like the way you did this. I've got a better idea." Some things get changed up, and it's fresh blood. So, one of the main things is, for a lot of the years of this hobby, everything was kind of tinkered. I mean, if you've been doing it a while, a lot of things you used to have to build yourself. And I know for me, I remember the first ATO I had was local hobbyist showed me, well, you take a glass carboy and you take a mercury switch and you put in a PVC pipe, and then you have an air pump that comes on when the switch goes down and pressurizes the carboy to dose water. And we had all kinds of homemade things. I mean, skimmers, it's like one guy in the club built skimmers. And I mean, once we saw, well, geez, I can just buy this and it's much better made. But now everything has to look really fancy and professional. And we were just happy, hey, I can buy it instead of having to build it myself.
Yeah, you're like, and it works.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So the new skimmer I saw coming out was kind of funky. There's like a little like spiral waterfall design coming out of it to keep it nice and quiet. And if you do that were very unique. I haven't seen that before.
Yeah, so one of the challenges has always been, how do you separate the air from the water, and how do you keep that quiet and splash free? And so the whole idea was to tailor a sort of a screw type drain that slowed the water flow, gave the surface area for the air to escape, but then let the water go down below the water line without splash. And it really works very well.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in person. I just watched a bunch of video clips when people are posting it, but it looks like really unique. And I have a bit of a silence obsession, so anything that makes a super silent skimmer is always a big plus.
That's kind of one of the obsessions of the company as well. Just, being in Europe, people live in smaller dwellings, and noise is a big issue. It's interesting when they come to visit, they're like, well, an American household is generally louder. We don't have air conditioning. We hear, they hear like the noise of the air rushing through the vents and the refrigerator noise. And they're like, we don't have these noises in our houses.
That's good though. That means they have a higher level of silence requirements.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, question in the chat. Andrew, thoughts on a Tunze wave box for an 8x4x1 tank?
So I've had to break this news to people for the last several months, but wave boxes are discontinued now.
Ah.
No, they were one of our big inventions and they were a huge hit, but the reality is now you can make that same flow with any pair of power heads, DC power heads. The new Hub Edition pumps make it really easy. Actually, you can put one on each end, put them in inverse. So, I actually just did a video that should be on our Tunze Tech Tips channel fairly soon that walks you through how to do all that.
Nice.
You can probably still find one because it's very recently, but 8x4, and what was the other dimension?
8x4x1.
So, you know, that when you get into a tank that's very long, you tend to get a bigger wave. When you get into a tank that's wider, that kind of shortens it. And when the tank is short height-wise, that can also shorten it because there's this, it works on resonance and the pulse flow has to bounce off the other side of the tank. And just, you know, any sort of disturbance like the shallow water or an obstacle will reduce it. I think it would work. You'd want to do the 6214. I know we actually still have a couple of them in the US warehouse, so they're definitely still available. But, you know, it's one of those things, is it worth doing? The tank is so wide, I think you're going to lose some height. My guess would be it would work, but the wave would be somewhat chaotic and imperfect, just the shallow water. And I don't know how much room he has to the edge, but, you know, if you had a 3/4 inch wave, would it be splashing out? You know, that's the other thing you have to consider.
Yep.
Worst case, you would need a second wave box because of the width. And you put them both on the same side and set them to run in, you know, not inverse, but in tandem, basically.
Yeah, two would probably do the job, I think. Do you find, so did those get discontinued more just because the power heads can accomplish the same thing now?
That's pretty much it. Power heads can accomplish the same thing. And then the other issue was noise is increasingly an issue for most people. So, you know, and the wave box, what made it shine was that it was a very energy efficient way to do this. But the power heads have gotten more and more efficient. And so you don't need, you know, you can use two modern 6105s or 6075s and use actually the same or less power than the wave box would use. So that advantage is lost, and they make noise because when the water's pumping out, air gets sucked in and it sounds like Darth Vader breathing. And so that noise is kind of annoying.
That's probably the biggest reason.
The tank that's now in my office used to be in my living room. My wife works from home, and she just, okay, I had to go work in my office and in the bedroom because I can't deal with that noise. So
that's fair enough.
I use two power heads to do the same thing, and it's much quieter. So
no, I agree. Okay, Reefing with O. Thanks for the super chat, buddy. Hi, Roger. Can't wait for the Orca. So speaking of cool flow, having that rotates around the tank where you can program is pretty cool. So the Orca, I think that's an exciting new one coming up too for a lot of people.
I agree. I think that's going to be sort of revolutionary in that you can set, a lot of people don't understand that you're not just setting it to oscillate overhead. You're setting it so that when it's pointing at the glass, my flow is at 100%. When it passes by the sensitive coral, my flow drops down to 30%. You're actually programming the angle and the flow rate at each angle.
That is
so it's
cool.
A lot more sophisticated than people, I think, understand. Just, you know, people think, well, wow, it's neat. It's oscillating power head, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, so you're like, here's a sensitive coral, 20%. Here's an acro, 70%. Here's this, you know, down the tank, 100%.
Exactly. And we're trying everything we can to have it out by the end of October is our target launch date. So
nice. I think that's going to be a really popular one because I know flow is, you know, probably one of the most important things in a tank. and
Yeah.
it is tricky to make everything happy, all the time. Even like my tank, like a Peninsula tank, like it's always a challenge to get flow in certain areas, pushing it 6 feet. So I'm like, ooh, I could direct in all kinds of new areas with that thing. So it looks pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, 6 feet, you always do have that issue where the flow diminishes as it goes down the tank. You probably would need another one on the other side, but you definitely do have a lot more versatility with it oscillating.
Nope, definitely. Do what's actually question for you on a 6 foot Peninsula tank? Because I always avoid trying to put power heads at the very far end. I haven't done it, but I've debated, the fake rocks where you can hide them inside and stuff. But what
Sure.
solution would you do to get as much flow as you can 6 feet away?
Uh, so I mean, it would kind of rule out doing the oscillator or the Orca. If you use the Stream 3 and you
Mm-hmm.
put that flow rectifier attachment, that if you can imagine, flow comes off a propeller and it has a twist to it, sort of like a screw.
Yep.
And if the flow rectifier on the Stream 3, it has the opposite twist and kind of turns it back into a laminar flow, so you get a maximum reach.
Mm-hmm.
That'll comfortably get the flow down 7 to 8 feet.
Okay.
The 6255 with the narrow housing will generally get flow down at least 6 feet.
Okay.
So those would be the two options I can think of that would really do that. The 6105 will do it, but when you get down to the far end, the velocity is so low, you're pretty much going to be in a zoanthid mushroom sort of category of flow.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll dig into those a bit more. Yeah, that's always the tricky part on there is because you really don't want any other pumps visible on that Peninsula end, but it's always the challenge for flow.
I had a Peninsula tank before we moved some years ago, and that I basically had to surrender and put power heads in the little stream rocks on the far end,
Mm-hmm.
and I nano streams and try to make it as discreet as possible, and it worked. But from that experience, I was more or less like, I'm just not going to ever do a Peninsula again, because there's all these technical hurdles that, as neat as it looks, make it very challenging. So
No, for sure. With the rocks, they are cool, but then my thought's always like, okay, if I actually put it at the Peninsula, and then you got to like hide the cord, and when you maintain it and rebury it, and then the logistical tricky bits for at least the far end of it.
it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember back, I had a friend that told me, if people are paying attention to the technical equipment in your tank, you're doing something wrong. They should just think,
Yeah.
wow, that's an incredible coral. And I think it's true. You don't notice those things so much,
Mm-hmm.
but it's kind of, if you restore cars or you do anything, you notice every imperfection because it's yours, it's your work.
Pretty much.
But the average person doesn't, they just, oh, wow, that fish is so cool. They don't even notice the cord or some little detail. So
Yeah.
you kind of got to look that way. I mean,
We always obsess over our own systems more than someone else's. Like someone else, you'd never think about it, but yours, you're like, hey, it must be perfect and da da da.
yeah.
Yep. Okay, questioning you in the chat from Jay. Hi, Roger. Absolutely love Tune's products. Brilliant quality design, warranty, and customer support. Only constructor criticism website needs attention. I went to the website to read about the new 6040 pump, is well suited for a Nano Max XL. Seems they aren't advertised on the website at all. Is this?
So I'm assuming that this is the Tunze.com website, and you would be correct. So this was, I was actually at the factory just a little over, I guess it was about 2 months ago. And so our website is very old. And we were actually one of the very first aquarium companies to have a website. I think the website was made in 1996. So it's old, and it was all custom, and it was all hacked. It was more or less like one of the first websites, and all put together without the forms that you have now, where everything's kind of, you can plug and play and put in your pictures, and you've got a template. We want to switch to that. That's actually already in the works, but when you've got this old tech and you're trying to get everything to work together and start all over again, I've actually seen, and there's just things that become very complicated. So it is in the works. We're trying to get that fixed. It's just trying to work with this. Sometimes being the first to something isn't necessarily the best.
Yep.
Having one of the first sites is an example of that.
No, that's fair. Okay, I have a question. The Turbell, the Stream 3 pumps, they even have a rock to hide them in. There's rocks for everything. I love it. I love that you could do that. Does that impact the flow at all? Putting them inside of there?
No, the rock is so that pump does take some flow in from the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
but it's kind of a square pump with a round opening.
Okay.
And you know, the pump, all of those rocks, they basically take a PVC fitting that it fits in.
Mm-hmm.
The stream rock, there's a pair of O-rings that just kind of make it rest on top of this round opening, and enough water gets down into the rock, and the flow is unimpeded. The main thing though that you do compromise is when you use the rock, you have to use that deflector. The deflector gives you this wide fan flow, and that's not going to have the greatest reach.
Okay.
Personally, I prefer having the Stream 3 on its side using the flow rectifier, or at least the grid. That gives you the longest reach and the maximum impact, and really, to me, that's what makes the pump shine. But I do have a lot of people that tell me they like the deflector, that, you know, I suppose if you're keeping euphyllias and different corals that like that more diffuse flow.
Is the deflector like the round one that kind of curves it? And I'm assuming
Yeah,
the one
kind
for
of
the
a
distance is the little like propeller style one.
right. And that spoon, you know, you flared out the flow into this big wide 45-degree projection, kind of a periscope, and that really reduces the force and the reach of the flow.
Okay, that makes sense. How close could you have that one to the surface?
So I would say probably 12 inches.
Okay.
I mean, you can adjust the speed, and that pump can go pretty slow, but I think you could comfortably get it to nearly full power with about 12 to 14 inches of water over the top.
Okay. Looks like a good one. I may have to try this one to try and shoot them the far end of the tank and let it wrap around.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple other ones. New ATO design. So ATOs are probably, you know, arguably, I'm going to say probably one of the more popular products. I mean, Powerheads are probably there too, but everyone, you know, and their dog always recommends, you know, the Tunze ATOs. I've been using them for years. They're awesome. Recently, I got the newer style ones, which have been solid and worked really well. I heard there was a new tweak version of that coming up, though.
Yeah, well, so I mean, it's, you know, the Osmolator we were actually the inventors of the first ATO system, the Osmolator. And so it's something we focus on quite a bit. And the new one kind of uses the same technology, you know, the same basic idea of the original one, where you have the safety sensor as a backup, and you have the 10-minute time limit. So we've added a couple of redundancies for safety, and those technologies are totally separate.
Yep.
Like in our mind, it would never make sense to use two optic sensors. Whatever makes one fail would probably make the second one fail.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to use separate technologies, and they should be totally independent of each other. But the anyway, you were going to ask about the new one, or
I guess first couple questions just for my own curiosity. So the new one, is it an optical and is it a temperature sensor? What is the secondary?
So the secondary, it's a combination. So there's a heater in there, and it's a very small micro heater and a temperature sensor. And what it's detecting is if it was just in air, that's going to heat up to roughly 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And if water comes into contact with it, and it can also be if you were to touch it, but anything that takes that heat away, it suddenly detects the temperature has dropped. And that's why when they start up, they flash the white light for a while. It's actually doing a calibration, and it's saying, okay, I've read 90 degrees a dozen times in a row with no variation, so I'm good to go. But if there's a lot of jumping around and variation, it's like, well, the heater hasn't heated up yet. Maybe there's something on it, and it goes through that before it actually starts running. It needs to get several baseline readings that are the same.
Okay, that makes sense. No, that's pretty cool. It's a really unique, cool way to have multiple sensors in a very tiny package.
Yeah, I mean the main thing for us was that the float switches, for one, they're bulky.
Hmm.
For two, though they generally are pretty reliable, they do tend to eventually fail. If they're just used as a backup, they're more reliable, but when they're used continuously, the you know there's essentially a reed switch in there that the magnet and the bobber is actuating, and it can only take so many switching cycles before it fails. So
Hmm.
trying to get rid of that failure point was, and that bulk were part of the idea behind the new sensor.
Yep, that makes sense. No, it works well. I have one on nano tank in my office, and I have another one on the tank beside me, and they've been super solid.
Well, thank you.
Yep. Okay, question. Phil in the chat. Hi everyone. Will the Stream 3 eventually upgrade to the Hub Edition controller?
Yes. So actually, in Europe, they already have the Hub Edition controller on them. Kind of fill people in on what's going on with that. Every time we submit a product to the FCC, it's a fairly expensive process. To get that license and to use Wi-Fi, you need an FCC broadcast license. The Stream 3 is getting an upgrade. We've been working on it for a while. And if you submit something as a family of pumps, so say we finish the new Stream 3, we're working on a return pump based on the Stream 3 that's actually pretty close to done. And the 9430 that you saw uses the Stream 3 as a needle wheel pump.
Mm-hmm.
If all three of those things are finished and we submit them to the FCC at the same time, we only have to pay one license fee.
That makes sense.
And that's the reason to do it that way. It's actually surprisingly expensive. Every one of those licenses, you're kind of looking at minimum around $10,000.
Oh, crazy.
And that's assuming everything goes well and you get it the first time.
And that's just to say, yes, you're allowed to use Wi-Fi in your product.
Yes.
Huh, crazy.
So, and people say, well, why didn't you use Bluetooth? It's like, well, Bluetooth, we tried that at one point, and Bluetooth is probably an even worse racket. There's a Bluetooth consortium that you have to pay. And then depending on the version of Bluetooth you use, you may find out, well, Apple wasn't part of the consortium at that time. So if you want to use Bluetooth on Apple, you have to pay Apple separately. There's a whole bunch of different licensing and regulation that goes with any of that technology. And it gets very difficult if you're trying to do it right. If you're not just, well, I made it in China and I'm shipping it on Temu and it has no license or registration whatsoever.
Yeah, that's logistical hurdles. Okay, Alyssa, Roger, I'm sold on the Skimmer. When is it going to be available in the USA?
So it's the same thing we were talking about. Once that pump series is done and we get the FCC approval, they'll be available. I know we're really trying to have that wrapped up before the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
This 3 will get an upgrade to where it has more flow. It has it'll have the Wi-Fi controller and it'll be more energy efficient. So
Nice.
the pump's been around for a while, and with the work we did on the 6105, essentially having the power consumption, they saw that we could change the propeller and change some design features and get even more flow out of this with the same energy.
Nice. That's a win-win. This was another one a while ago for the newer ATO design. I remember seeing one. I think it was a German video, but it was like more of like a Wi-Fi version for like alerts and stuff like that. Is that something that's on the similar boat for the radar?
Yeah, so that was always planned. We came out with the Osmolator 3, then the Osmolator 3 Nano followed, and then we've been working on the Osmolator 3 Professional.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll essentially be the Osmolator 3 that people know now, but the cord will end in a white control box, just like those hub or the 7020 controllers on the Hub Edition pumps. And you'll be able to set it up to where it's cloud enabled. It sends you notices. There'll be an additional sensor to tell you, hey, your reservoir is empty. There'll be different error notifications that, hey, your pump's run an awfully long time, there's something wrong here. So it's all when I was over there, Felix had a prototype of it running on his tank, and there's still kind of, well, we could add this feature, we could remove this feature. There's still some playing around with what all features it'll have, but we're hopeful to have that probably middle of next year.
Nice. No, perfect. Yeah, I remember it was a while ago and it wasn't in English. So I'm like, okay, this is probably like a very early video on it, but it
Yeah.
piqued my interest. Okay, another one for my own curiosity. Most of the Tunze products just have a number for their name. Is there any like meaning or significance to that? Is it like,
Well, it's people ask me about that, and one thing that I just find interesting, that it seems to be a very German way to label things. Like if you look at BMW, they 7 Series,
yeah,
Mercedes is S class, but then S550 it kind of designates the engine.
mm-hmm.
So for ours, it's similar. So the lower numbers, when you get in the single digits, those are usually like care magnets, glues, decorative. 3s are always the ATO systems. 6s are power heads. The 3s are also filters are in there. 9s are the skimmers, but everything kind of is in categories by that first number.
Okay.
And the further you go down the number series, so say 6055, well, that's a power head, but the propeller would be 6055.700. And then like the little disc that goes under the propeller, when you get into the hundredths place, that's like a sub-assembly. So 6055.740, it's...
So the first part's like the part number, and then the rest is the sub part number. But if you're looking at like a 6025 or 6045, is it like significant of one's bigger than another, or it's just like an arbitrary number that was picked?
So on power heads, that like the 60, that it's a power head.
Yeah.
But then the 45 is 4,500 liters an hour.
Okay, so yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering. Is it a rating of flow? Is it a rating of something? Okay.
Yeah. And skimmers, it's pretty comparable. It's that the 4, it's a little more rounded because maybe we used a number before. So like we just called it the 4 because it handles 3,000 liters, but we used to have a 9,003, and it's within 20 years the parts, it might confuse somebody, so we're just gonna go to 4 on this one. So
fair enough. Okay,
there are considerations, but
there's method to the madness. I always wondered if there was significance or were just random numbers. It's like, this one sounds good.
No, it's pretty consistent. It's funny, sometimes I call them out on it. Like I'm like, well, guys, it's always .700 for an impeller, and then you did this one. And it's like, why? And oh well, that number was already taken, and we couldn't do it. And,
oh, that's good. I like it. Extension cables for the pumps, are those guys in stock now? My own, when I was hunting for when they first came out, I could not find them for the life of me.
For the power heads or for the osmolators?
For the osmolator.
So osmolators, we definitely have them in stock. BRS stocks them now.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure Aquatic and I think Premium and I think Champion stock them too. They're out there now.
Okay, perfect.
And I know we have them in stock. That was one, basically that waterproof connector for the pump. It was a little more complicated than initially anticipated to assemble those cables. And so there was kind of a slowdown in putting the cables together, but we've got them now, and that's all worked out.
Okay, perfect. I know when I first bought mine, I was hunting everywhere and I could not find them anywhere in like North America. They're all in stock overseas. I was like, but okay, good to know. I can hunt them down.
We have them now. I know in the U.S. warehouse, I've got at least 4 dozen of them out there, so they're good. Okay, they're out.
Good, perfect. Is there any other funky new products on the horizon? I saw a couple from Wrap, but I wasn't actually there. So, what else was released on the new stuff?
I mean, the new tongs, those will be in the next couple of weeks. They're interesting. They fold. Tongs are, not everybody needs them, but if you have a big tank, they're definitely useful.
They are always useful. Like just throwing this out there. I mean, I have, 2 foot deep tank, but just to keep your hands out of the tank, if a coral gets knocked over or something, not putting your whole arm in there is definitely better for your tank. So I think they're very useful for people.
I guess I can see that. I don't know. I've always, people, I had people asking me about them at the show, and well, what would you buy? I was like, no, I just use my hand. I didn't even think about it.
I will, but I try not to as much these days.
Okay.
You got to think, you got like something on your hand, all the oils get in the tank. Like, I don't know. I feel like the tank's happier if you like keep your hands out more. So I try and do it less. I used to be bad, right? Every single day, my hands in there fixing, picking up something. And now I'll leave it for a few days and I'll wait till I got to do a few things and I'll eventually do it.
Yeah, I mean, we are working on several things, working on updating all the skimmer models, but that'll probably be a couple of years. They'll slowly evolve. The 9430 was the first.
Mhm.
Um, the Stream 3, the new return pump that's based on the Stream 3. I've seen some previews of that, but it
Nice.
looks like it's really cool. Very quiet, very strong. Um, it'll have to be a submersible pump though.
Yeah.
Um, we've
Mhm.
just got a lot of things. We're always trying to work on new products.
Mhm.
Uh, there's already some discussion about a new generation of Osmolator, but with a brand sensor technology.
Nice.
And that's going to take a few years. So, it always takes a while. Those things get tested a lot, and a lot of prototypes are made. And a lot of, like the streams or the Osmolator 3, one thing that probably no one realizes, but before we had this thermal sensor system, we were trying capacitive touch
Mhm.
as backup. Well, salt creep gets on there, and imagine your
Hmm.
touch screen with a drop of water on it. It can't tell the difference. And
Yeah.
no matter how much you tried to set parameters and program around that, it was just very unstable to have capacitive touch to detect the water levels. So
Yeah.
there's there's just limits to the technology available at the time, and then somebody finally figures it out.
Yeah.
The Osmolator 3 will get a quieter pump soon. That's very close.
The current
Uh,
one's already a bazillion times quieter than the original one. That was a welcome upgrade.
it is, yes, but they're so all the Hub Edition pumps will get an app. The app's already out in Germany. The app's needed for the Orca. Um, but the same guy that's working on the app is also working on getting the motors progressively quieter and quieter by tuning the software and the way they work.
Nice.
So that should benefit all the DC pumps over time. Um, there's we pride ourselves in always having new innovations and not just waiting around and we want to always be the first with things. So
Mhm.
I think given time, you'll see more and more new things coming from us.
Nice. I appreciate making it quieter, and definitely the quality control has always been top notch. Okay, this made me laugh. I have to read this one out. Phil goes, I use my old Tunze tongs to grip my magnetic scraper to clean the back glass. He goes, hey, it works good. It grabs the foam on the Tunze magnet perfectly.
The new ones that, one thing I'll say for the new tongs, they do grab a lot. I felt the grip was a lot tighter.
Mhm.
I have funny thing a lot of times at personally and at work, we work with the stuff that either gets damaged somehow or is returned. And we actually have a couple of pairs of the older tongs that we used to pick up trash around the property, and they're missing like, one of the finger rubber tips or something. And it's sometimes they don't close completely to where they really can grab something. That's one thing I noticed with the older one.
Yeah. So the new ones. Now there was, I think, aluminum and carbon fiber, I think I saw. So two different versions.
And the aluminum, I think, in most cases would be perfectly adequate. But to me, you've got an aluminum screen top. You've
Mhm.
got aluminum arms holding up your lights.
Yep.
So how paranoid are you going to be about a little aluminum getting in your tank? We've already got all this aluminum. But for people that are real purists and very concerned about it, we do have the carbon fiber
Okay.
ones. So, and it's interesting. Everybody thinks the carbon fiber looks so cool that that's actually seems like it'll have the highest demand, which we'll see.
Yeah.
But
I was wondering the difference in the two different versions. Save that extra few ounces, but
it's really just for people that want to be absolutely sure they're not going to have metal contamination in their tank.
okay, no, fair enough. They yeah, the folding's pretty cool actually. I mean, just for like storing, shipping's probably cheaper to ship everything else. So
That was always a big deal with the old ones. The old ones, the tong itself was very inexpensive, but you almost couldn't ship it for less than $20. You just get in an oversized category, and that makes it very difficult to ship. So having it fold in half, you save a lot on shipping.
yeah, and it can probably fit in a drawer and easy to store now,
Yeah.
or your stand without being too long. No, that's pretty cool. The one with the new pump. I know the one thing that people loved with the old one is that you could fit it in water jugs and whatnot, where the new one doesn't quite fit nicely. Is there any plans to tweak or make a water jug friendly version?
So if I gave the honest answer, I hate jugs.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Those jugs, so everybody used them, and I don't know why they used them, but people use them, and then they would always complain about how the pump had air trapped in it. The pump's pumping water. You can't get to it to flip it upside down. You can't get to service the pump. It's like you just use a bucket. All these problems are avoided. But whatever to me, the jug is used to get water and fill the bucket, or to go up salt water to fill my aquarium. I don't use it for an ATO system.
Do you know?
But there is a workaround. It's optional. There's a small. We make a threaded part that replaces the hose fitting, and it makes it flush.
Yeah.
And then it barely fits, but then the hose is not as secure because it's this little flush nipple that the hose you have to push very hard, and it just shaves off enough length that if you are insistent on using a jug,
that's funny.
it will solve.
Do you know what's funny is I've never used one as an ATO in my life, but I know people used to, and I put a nano tank in my work office. So I was like, oh, I can just go snag a water jug every like few weeks and use that for my ATO. And I was like, it didn't fit. So then I ended up just buying an ATO container. But I just laughed because it's the first time I actually thought about that in like my entire career of having fish tanks was like, 4 months ago.
Yeah, the jugs that they always were a support issue on our end, just because there's no access to the pump. And so anything from air stuck in it to you can't see it, you can't reach it. It just is less than ideal solution from a technical standpoint.
Yeah, no, I just when I thought about it, I looked it up and I just saw so many people talk about it, so it just made me laugh because it's like I'd never had a consideration up until that point. So that's a good one. But I love that you actually made a solution for those hardcores that really like their jugs.
Yeah, it's I off the top of my head I can't remember the part number, but if you search 3154 or all parts for 3154 on the Tunze website, it would come up.
Oh, that's great. So the Tunze website, where does that ship from if someone orders off of it?
So U.S. orders ship from the U.S.
Okay.
One thing though, I have to clarify that I don't see this too often, but it does happen. People Google search a part number, and then they end up on. There's a generic English page on the Tunze website that's mostly intended for Scandinavian countries, just English being the universal language, but the price is in euros, and it's that order I will not get. You need to go to the Tunze website, select United States as your country, and then do all your searching and ordering on the Tunze website.
All right, good to know.
But if you so don't just Google search a part number and then assume that you're on the right page, because every country has their own page and the orders are routed to the nearest distributor.
Okay, fair enough. Good to know. What about for Canada? Does it go through like Phil probably?
Canada,
I
believe Canada, the spare parts orders ship from Germany.
From Germany? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Good to know. calcium reactor. I didn't know there was a Tunze calcium reactor. I'm perusing
Yeah,
the parts
calcium
page now.
reactors were one of our first products. I actually have one in the office, one of the very first calcium reactors, and it's interesting because it used an airlift tube to pump the water over the granulate with CO2 injection inside. It makes sense because it would degas the CO2, like you wouldn't have that worry about the CO2 accumulating.
Yeah.
But, calcium reactors have become such a niche product now that there's all these dosing systems and all the two parts and everything else. And you have a big outlay in technical equipment. I prefer them because you're spending the money up front, but you don't have, two part definitely adds up over time, and balling and all the other methods, you really, over a couple of years, you definitely notice how much you're spending. And Kalkwasser's pretty much never strong enough to give you all the calcium you need.
Yep.
Um,
I'm a big fan of them. I run one on my big tank just because it's so much more economical long term.
Yeah, and you're right. It's just it also requires a lot of patience to get the drip rate right, and you do have to make some adjustments periodically. But we do make them. There's two models. One, the 3171 is generally suitable for a system up to about 180, 200 gallons or so, and then the 3172 is good to about 400.
Yeah. You said you run one?
I do, yeah. I use the 3172.
Nice. How big is your tank?
265.
Nice. It's a good size.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's more or less morphed into a Fowler, even though it started out as a full-on reef tank, and that's largely because I've always had an obsession with a few fish that haven't played well with corals, and that's Semmelweis butterflies and Moorish idols.
Oh, nice. Those are pretty ones.
They are, and it's after years and years of trying and finally being successful with the fish, it's like, okay, well, now I've got the fish, but they tend to eat all the corals. And I've had several of artists before that didn't eat corals. Moorish idols are always they graze opportunistically at whatever they can get. So that just is what you get with that fish, and you just kind of hope the damage is minimal and the reef carries on. But you just kind of get attached to the fish, and it's like, well, I'd be a fool to get rid of them because I've tried for years to keep them, and now I'm successful, and I'll just roll with what I got.
Yep.
And I can keep gorgonians and leathers and soft corals just fine. Those aren't harmed, so just go with that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, it's still got corals. You just got to pick which ones will survive or grow fast enough to not notice.
That's the other side. Yeah, I mean, if they grow really fast, then the consumption is mitigated by the growth rate. So
yep. Another one that's always interested me, but I haven't tried it. But the EcoChic, I think it's called, the refugium light.
Yeah.
So that one's submersible, right?
They are. Felix, when I was over there, he had this goal because one of their biggest hurdles in Europe is the electricity consumption. The electricity rate is so high. Depending on where you live, it could be anywhere from 30 to 45 cents a kilowatt hour. So that's driven a lot of people out of the hobby just because their electric bill is already high. They don't want to add any more to that.
Yeah.
I think that when I was there, I remember he told me that his aquarium is now lower than an average TV with a Netflix account in terms of how much electricity you're using. So it's pretty impressive, but he just uses his 8850 LED lights, and he has a bank of 4 of them, and he did some custom wiring and custom controls set up.
Nice.
But it works really well. So
that's cool.
The 80. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I always thought it'd be kind of cool because if they're submersible, you could bottom light it. My thought was like, hey, you get more growth out of it if you're lighting it on both sides.
I've had people try that. I always thought it was kind of odd. I mean, it works, but I actually had people that were like, well, the underside of a Capricornus dies because there's no light. And I was like, yeah, but that's the the way it works in nature, and that's kind of how the reef gets built.
Yeah.
I've got 2 cats and a dog that are getting into it behind me, so pardon.
No problem.
But I always thought it was an interesting thought, but it just kind of goes against the way it's supposed to work. So
I haven't tried it, but it's something I always thought would be a cool experiment.
I know I've had customers that have tried it, and they said, "Yeah, no, it works." And I was just like, "Well, I mean, I get it. It looks ugly on the underside to have this cap that's just brown and dead tissue, but that's the way corals grow. I mean, that's how the reef gets formed. That plate dies and falls off and just becomes part of the rock and sand structure of the reef." So.
I don't think I do in a display, but I do in the refugium for like growing algae and other stuff. Didn't see how that worked out, but
yeah,
I don't know. It'd be interesting. There's all these just weird little like side things. I always kind of half dabble and wonder, it's fun to experiment.
I mean, the other thing, those lights, Jake always swore by them for photography. He said that you can set them up and set the color, and that they're perfect for taking a picture of a fish or a coral. And so people find a lot of uses for them. For us, it was just more or less our specialties are small electronics, waterproofing, and building something unique. And with LEDs, it's such a saturated market. There's dozens of manufacturers of LEDs, and they make really good LEDs. So unless you can do it better or cheaper, it's kind of what's the reason for you to be in this too?
Yep.
And making a waterproof one was our way to do something different. So
no, and it's cool. Different's good. But yeah, I don't know. For whatever reason, I think for like a refugium, I think it was really cool. If anyone in the chat's done it, let me know. But to be able to like bottom light it, or top and bottom, and just like sandwich it in there, because then you wouldn't have light spill, and in theory it would grow better because it'd have more light. But
yeah, I could see. I mean, I think in a refugium it could work well, especially for like the macros and that.
That and too, your sump would be cleaner because there's less light spill. That's always a problem, right? When it like hits your skimmer and hits other stuff, then you got more maintenance to do.
I mean, the grow light spectrum interferes with the optic sensors on the Osmolator and really any optic sensor, because they all work on infrared, and grow light has infrared in it. That's something to.
I didn't consider that. Good point. So. I don't know. Is there any other product categories that we haven't chatted about yet that you think are good ones to touch on?
Well, I mean, I would say the biggest sellers for us are power heads, the skimmers, the osmolators. We touched on all those, but there's the care magnets.
Yeah, those are great. I got one on my tank.
Those are, they work really well. The care panes are glass cleaner. That's an interesting product. What I found fascinating was I only learned this because I had a customer that was, she was kind of irate and said, well, it has this chemical in it. And I was reading the label. I was like, what? These are all natural botanicals. I was like, what chemical? And the cinnamondial. And so I looked it up. And I thought it was really fascinating that it's actually a big debate, because that's the oil that's in cinnamon and gives it its fragrance. But when it reacts with oxygen on its own, it becomes styrene, the plastic.
Interesting.
And so we always think of plastics and microplastics that would be carcinogenic, but apparently cinnamondial is really good for you. It tends to lower your blood pressure, reduce cholesterol. Like, it has a lot of health benefits. And it's mainly because it's a fairly potent antioxidant. It polymerizes when it reacts with oxygen. But when you use it as a glass cleaner, the reason it works so well is it leaves this film of styrene on your glass, which then prevents fingerprints from attracting. But then the downside of that is customers complain that glass is all streaked up. And it's like, well, you use what I try to explain to people is that as much as you may think that bottle's expensive at like $15, it's probably equal to like 4 bottles of Windex, because you're just going to use one little mist on like a 3-foot or 1 meter pane of glass, and you slowly buff it in, and that gives you that styrene coating. It works really well. You just have to not get carried away and use it like you would Windex and just cover the glass and
So
so
someone says there's streaks, it means they're using way too much of it.
they're using too much, or they still have a lot of salt residue on the glass, which, with any cleaner, once you start smearing that salt around, that's
Yeah.
a whole nother deal. So
I have not tried that. I will get a bottle and try it. Good to know. But yeah, I find some of them too, like once you get that little coating, like your magnet cleaner, everything just slides nicely across it, and
yeah.
no, it's a good one.
Yeah, no,
Caribacter. I've not tried that one before. Bacteria on substrate powder.
yeah, the Caribacter is it's an interesting product. So that comes from the same. There's a bio product company in France, and they work on. They're kind of outside of the aquarium industry. So like Carapanes was, I forget the exact. They developed a detergent from bacteria that's actually one of the ingredients in Carapanes.
Mm-hmm.
And they sell it for some sort of industrial use. I think the detergent was originally used to clean up or break down oil spills.
That's cool.
And then the Caribacter was developed for big fish farms that breed food fish.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole reason was that they, and you see, I'm sure you've seen it, like you go to a real market that has live fish. And how often do you look at the fish in there and they've got some sort of bleeding ulcer on them? They've got Vibrio. It's like, well, that's not very appetizing at the very minimum, and could be a serious health problem to eat a fish with. So,
fair enough.
so this Caribacter, it has a bacteria in it that fights Vibrio, and then it has a bacteria in it that digests the sludge in those very overstocked tanks.
Nice.
And they came to us with it, and said, well, we sell this to commercial fish farms. Would you be interested in it for aquariums? And it actually, in my experience, it works pretty well. If you have, like, say you have a green hair algae outbreak, and you add it every week. One thing with these bacteria is they're not necessarily like genetically engineered. It's just that they're from a different habitat. Usually they're going to come from a brackish water habitat. They live in a swamp, and so in saltwater, they only can live so long. And so you add them to the tank, they digest the sludge, then they go away. But what you'll see is if you have hair algae, the hair algae will get worse and worse and worse for the first few weeks because it's digesting the sludge and the nutrients that are in the rock and liberating it. And then all of a sudden you get to about week 6 to week 8, and the nutrients are gone, the rock's cleaned out, and they just crash. And it's an interesting thing to see, but it does seem to work in my experience. And I've had customers tell me that they've been able to get their nitrate or phosphate from really high to nearly zero. And that is something to keep an eye on, because having done things like that myself, you go from, oh, well, I had a really bad hair algae problem, and now I've got a dinoflagellate outbreak because I have no nutrients. So you've got to kind of know when to stop and say, okay, we got that under control. Let's leave things alone.
Yeah. Huh. That's pretty cool, though. So it'll lower nutrients across the board, essentially.
Yes. I mean, it's essentially a sludge digester. There's a lot of bacteria on the market that do that. I think what makes ours special is that it's a powder and it's a concentrate. So you're not paying for a bottle of water. You're paying for a very concentrated dry spore of the bacteria.
Which is much more...
It's suspended in, essentially just like a calcium clay. So
oh, that's pretty cool. No, there's all these products that I just haven't used, and I'm just like, I'm curious what this one is. So, and I don't know. I see tons of people are like fighting to get nutrients up, but I've never had that issue. I'm always the opposite side of it, trying to like lower them. So good to know.
I've generally had the other problem with getting the nutrients up lately. That's one thing I noticed with aquariums is that in the old days, it was always getting the nutrients down because we didn't have quite the efficiency of skimmers and filters, and we didn't have, if you had a refugium, it was some very primitive thing with just a clump of caulerpa floating around your
Hmm.
sump. It was, and now the nutrient export systems are so much better, and it's a lot easier to do water changes. So
Yeah.
between all those things, it's very easy to get to a situation where you're nutrient starved.
Hmm. No. Yeah, it's definitely more common. I just feed too much to have too many fish. But yeah, overall, 100% agree with you. Okay, Phil. I wasn't a fan of Carapanes, but I just learned I was using too much. Just tried way less, and now no streaks. Yay! See, now you know.
Yeah, no, it's a very common one. I read I actually read complaints and comments on websites
Mm,
about the product. And most of the time, like if there's somebody has a negative comment about some MBRS, I'm really not able to reply. I can't do anything about
mm,
it. They have their username, and I don't even know who they are. I couldn't
yep.
contact them. But in my mind, I'm like, hey, you did this wrong. I know this is
It's
how
such an
you
easy
fix that.
fix. Yep, that's a hard one. Okay, I'm gonna buy some and try it. That's hilarious. I know we've actually brought it up in conversations before about it too, so I laugh. So that's perfect. So everyone's been using it wrong. If you ever have any complaints, spray less. Dun-dun. All right. If you guys got any other questions in the chat, let me know. If I missed anything, please do ask them again. Alicia, same thing. A better roller mat will help. Probably. Good thing you have one on the way. Okay, so I'm assuming your personal aquarium is probably just packed full of Tunze products. What's your
It is.
personal
Yeah,
favorites of the product lines? So what's your go-to stuff?
well, I mean, the Mar reactor was a product I worked on, but it was my version was I started with something very primitive. It was if you know our 3168 filter, I basically hollowed it out, put an 8821 LED, one of the EcoChic light bars in
Yeah.
it, cut a piece of that needle point. I don't even actually know what it's called, but people that sew and make what do they call it, embroidery.
Mm-hmm.
You can
Oh,
tell
that
I'm
like
not.
meshy stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got a piece of that and thought, well, I'll grow turf algae or something on this and
Mm-hmm.
put it in there, and it worked. And I was like, hey guys, I got this idea, and then it evolved from there. But that was a few years of working on it and perfecting it from the little toy I built. But
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
I really like the pumps. I mean, the Osmolator's generally been a big favorite of mine. I mean, it makes everything easy as far as topping off.
Yep.
Um, I'm pretty happy with everything I've put on my tank. I have the 9430, and I just got one of those pumps to play with, the new pump.
Nice.
But my 9430 is actually one of the very first ones, and I had to modify it myself to accept the new pump. And
Mm-hmm.
so,
No, that's pretty
hey.
cool. So 9430, that's the skimmer, right?
Yes, that's the one that you
Yep.
talked about. That
Yeah.
the new one has that spiral. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool. This is working well. Nice and quiet.
Yeah, it is. With the new pump, it's very quiet. I don't have that spiral drain thing because I modified an
Yep.
old one. It was just, hey, try out the new pump and let us know what you think. And what do you think of the speed range and the settings and how does it work? And I had to do all the modifications that I upgraded to be functionally like the new one,
Mm-hmm.
except for that spiral drain, but all the internals. So it's kind of a Frankenstein skimmer. It's more just to check the pump's function.
Yeah.
But
Oh, that works though. Nice. What was he describing? Like a scrubber? Yeah, that's the algae reactor.
yeah,
Yep. So is that the EcoChic like that's on it, and then the chamber?
it is.
Yeah.
That's the 8831 LED light. On the 3181 has one, and it's roughly, I guess that's a 4-inch diameter tube, and then 3182 is an 8-inch diameter tube and has two of them.
Okay, perfect. Here, I'll pull up a quick photo.
Yeah,
There you go.
that's it.
That's the bigger one there, Phil.
182. That's the one I have on my tank.
Nice.
Something that people overlook and don't appreciate on it that I think is really cool is that the the lid actually has several magnets in it, and it can actually seal itself only by the magnets.
Oh,
So
that is cool, actually.
it's if it's in sump, you know, and you're not worried about jostling it loose and water going everywhere, you
Yeah.
can just rely on the magnets to close it, and you don't have to necessarily mess with the thumb screws.
That is kind of nice.
Yeah.
Oh, on a completely random note, Tunze magnets are always the best ones too. Like all the magnet mounts, magnet everything, like they stick well, they just work well with like a little rubber, all the things on it. They've always just been the most solid out of all like the random different pumps and magnets out there.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's all good.
But just go see the rest of the family and quit barking at them.
But you're more exciting.
Yeah, no, my dog, the whole family came back and he's barking that they're here. It's like, you know who it is. You can hear their voices. Just go see them. I mean,
yeah, I know. Mine does the same thing.
But yes, the magnets. So that's something that we've, you know, I think we were the first to have a magnet holder. And magnet cleaners were something we got into because all the magnets on the market at the time, the magnets rusted.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Tunze's Axel, he said, you know, this is such a simple thing. If you just build it like a power head, the power head has to be absolutely watertight. We'll just fill it with polyurethane and seal it up.
Yep.
But
nobody does that.
I gotta get the dog. Come on, buddy. Just go. You're too crazy.
Yeah, but for whatever reason, you know, it doesn't matter what it is, like different pumps or, you know, frag racks and rocks, like the sealed magnets, they just work well, they stick well. I don't know. It's just one of those weird things that I just noticed it with other random ones that they're never as good. So you guys definitely nailed the mounting.
I mean, one thing we try to do with it, a lot of people we notice cut corners on how strong they make the magnets. They try to like incorporate a suction cup or something. It's like, well, we got away from suction cups because they don't work. So mixing a suction cup with a magnet, it's eventually not going to work.
And you're just putting more gap between the magnets. You're not helping yourself.
But the magnets are very expensive. And so that's the reason people get away from it. I mean, I've had people complain about, oh, you know, the magnet for 3/4 inch is, you know, $60. That's like, well, just go look online and see how much a magnet is that lifts 250 pounds and then get back to me. It's like, oh, well, that's how strong those things are. It's a magnet inside there. They cost real money. It's not. And then, you know, that's just a raw magnet. So.
Nope, I agree. There you go, Phil. Out of all the magnets, I don't think I've ever had a Tunze fail. All the rest have failed, including Panerai. There you go. See? That's what I mean. On top of the magnet game.
Well, it takes, I actually, when I was over in Germany, I did a video where I walked around the factory and worked on different products. And there's a scene where they show how the magnets are made. And you can see it's a lot goes, there's a lot of, you have to put a layer of the resin, the magnet goes in, then you're building up layers and you're waiting for them to set up just right. And then it's vibrating on a table to get all the air bubbles out. And it is a process that the smallest thing going wrong can cause a failure of the magnet. The earlier cleaning magnets that failed all the time from other manufacturers, we found that one of the things they did was they wrapped the magnet with cardboard. And that was to fill up the space so that you didn't have to use so much polyurethane resin. Yeah. And it's like, well, but then you put a wick around it. So if there is any hole, it's going to hold the water and the magnet's going to swap. And yeah, there's a lot of things that people do to cut corners and make it cheaper that really bite you if you try to do that. Yeah, so
I believe it. I mean, how much, polyurethane, how much are you really saving in a thing? It can't be that much to justify it.
It's interesting because it isn't that expensive. The problem is that it's and I don't really understand, and I guess it's that it generates a lot of heat when it cures.
Yes, it is actually.
The other issue, there was some other issue, but there's very strict limits on how much you can have in a building in Europe. And once you pass a certain amount, you need all these additional safety protocols and that. So the less you can use,
Interesting.
it's like an
Hmm.
overhead issue. It's not so much the resin
Okay.
itself. It's all the regulations and hurdles to
Hmm.
work with it to make the problem.
Okay,
So
because I'm like way back when I used it to encase like little electronic sensors, and I was like, it's
yeah.
not that expensive, just dump a little more in there. But yeah, okay, all the logistical hurdles, that makes more sense.
Yeah, there's I know that when they told me like the amount they go through at the factory and that they were like, we're right at this line where we would have to be the next bigger size corporation with a fire marshal on staff and all this other stuff.
All right, okay,
Okay.
makes a bit more
Uh,
sense. But then you just make your casing smaller, like the Tunze ones are just thinner and long, so I mean you probably don't need as much of it, right?
well, yeah, I mean, I think there's a limit to how much surface area you have to get a good seal and good
Hmm.
adhesion. Because I know that the original magnet holders we had that were H-shaped, every now and again there would be one that had a flaw where the magnet would rust. And we had early care magnets that was a problem, and it was because the in that case it was that we had a defect where the hardener wasn't mixed in properly,
Hmm.
and the resin wouldn't fill up all the way, and then you had this soft surface that water could get through to the magnet.
Oh, gotcha.
So now it's an additional quality control check to check that the resin's fully cured and that's right. And we generally don't see those problems anymore. But
Nice. Well, overall, definitely appreciate Tunes and all like the cool products you make and stand behind it. So I know a lot of people rave about the support and customer service, especially you. So I figured you're a great one to have on.
well, thank you. No, I mean we try. I mean it's like Felix says, his family's name's on the box,
Hmm.
and I know it's funny. We've had points in our history, like during COVID, or we were hit pretty hard by shutdowns in Germany and lack of supply. And we'd talk about budget issues, and well, we could get stricter on support. He's like, no, because that's what all our competitors are doing. And then
Hmm.
you don't get a second chance. Don't burn bridges. So
Yep.
that's a big thing to us. I will say that there are people that probably hate me at some point. I probably told them no on something, but all I try to do is be fair, and
Hmm.
that means I have to essentially act like a judge and be fair to what's fair for Tunzi in Germany, what's fair to me, and what's
Hmm.
fair to you. Uh, and I can't cover something being fair that you destroyed. I have to kind of
I
be
mean,
a
that
judge.
should be a given, but yeah.
Well, I mean, there are people that it's, unfortunately, a lot of people don't see things that way. But, that's all I can promise you is that we really try to be fair. And if we make a mistake, we own it. So
Hmm. No, that's awesome. Well, I definitely appreciate you coming on and joining me today. It's been a great chat.
thank you very much,
Yep.
Devin.
Awesome. And thanks everyone who came and hang out with us for the evening. And oh, thanks for the super chat. Everyone's watching. Make sure if you have any questions afterwards, let us know in the comments below. But otherwise, make sure you hit that like button and we'll catch you guys next week's stream.